Hello, my dear students. I welcome you once again to this current lecture. As we know that in the last lecture we completed one important point from the syllabus, that is the Hittorf's rule. In this Hittorf's rule, we studied the two different cases for the study of the migration of ions when the equal speed of ions is there, that is a case number first, and when the unequal speed of ions is there, that is a case number second. So by using both these methods we studied how to calculate the transport number of cations and anions. So that is called as the Hittorf's rule. Now in the current lecture we are going to study the next important point from the chapter, that is called as the determination of transference or the transport number. We know very well the transport number of cations and anions. So the question arises how to determine this particular transport number of the ions. So some methods are there for the determination of these transport numbers of the ions. So the first important method for the determination of this transport number is called as the Hittorf's method. Now we have to study what is the use of this Hittorf's method to determine this particular transport number of these particular ions. So first of all, this is the first important method for the determination of the transport number of the ions. So this method is based upon it is based upon the observation of changes in concentration, based upon the changes in concentration of an electrolytic solution, changes in concentration of an electrolytic solution in the vicinity of the electrodes, in the vicinity of electrodes. So this is the basis of this particular method. Means in this method we have to take into consideration the observation in terms of changes in concentration of an electrolytic solution in the vicinity of the electrodes. So how these changes in concentration of the electrolytic solution can takes place in the vicinity of these particular electrodes. So by measuring that particular changes we have to determine the transference or transport number. So this is a basis of this particular Hittorf's method. Now next important part is that the instrumentation of this particular method. What is the instrumentation? Instrumentation of this method. So this method has the instrumentation which is shown in the figure. As this type of instrumentation is there for this particular Hittorf's method. So this type of instrumentation can be used for this Hittorf's method. So we have to study now what type of various parts can be used in the instrument of this particular Hittorf's method. So first of all, this method consists of this type of the transference apparatus for the determination of transport number. So this apparatus consists of the first important part, that is called as A. This A is there. So this total part is called as the transport cell. This part A is there. It is called as this transport cell. In this transport cell, the two electrodes are there. One is a cathode. So this part is called as the cathode compartment, and while this right hand side part is called as the anode compartment. So this is the total important part used in this apparatus. This is called as the transport cell A. In this transport cell we have to take the given electrolytic solution for which we are going to determine the transport number of the ions. So this is the first important part in this apparatus. The second important part is called as the colorimeter C. This colorimeter C is there. In this colorimeter, it is commonly made up from the silver. So this silver colorimeter is there. This silver colorimeter is joined, or it is connected to this particular battery along with this particular transport cell. So this transport cell and this colorimeter can be arranged in a series with that of the battery through this variable resistance. This R is called as a variable resistance. This B is a battery. So we can say that this transport cell A and colorimeter C is connected in series with this battery through the variable resistance R. After that, the next important part present in this apparatus is called as the millimeter. That is MA. This is a millimeter is there. So by using this millimeter, we have to roughly estimate the amount of current that can be carried by the particular electrolytic solution taken in this transport cell. So by using this millimeter, we may calculate in a rough amount the quantity of electricity that has to be passed by this particular ions of the electrolytic solution. So this is a simple important parts present in this particular apparatus, that is called as the transference apparatus for Hittorf's method. Now how this apparatus or how this method is working. So first of all, what we have to take into consideration in this case, whenever the current is passed from this battery, so this current entered in this particular center compartment in which we take the electrolytic solution. After entering this particular current in this compartment in which electrolytic solution is there, then there is a chemical reaction can be start that can be called as the electrolysis. So after this electrolysis reaction, what happens? There is a transference, or the displacement of these ions can be takes place in the oppositely charged electrodes, and in this way we can say that when these ions get deposited on the respective electrodes, we can say that there is a conductance phenomena can be takes place, and when this conductance phenomena can be takes place, we can say that the current is carried, the given amount or given quantity of current can be carried along with these ions. So we can say that whenever a current is entered in this particular solution, after that the ions can be migrated towards the oppositely charged electrode, they get deposited on a particular electrode, and during this a current is carried out by this particular ions. So we can say that whenever this current can be carried, so we have to take into consideration the readings given by this particular colorimeter C. So this colorimeter C is used for the estimation of the current carried by the particular ions in from this particular solution. So after that, when the chemical changes can be takes place, we have to stop the particular current from the external source. After that, we have to drain out the solution present in this compartment, and after that we have to take the weight of the particular electrodes. After taking the weight of these particular electrodes, we have to analyze these particular electrodes. Now by taking the weight and by the analysis of these particular electrodes, we have to take into consideration that particular weight in order to calculate or in order to determine the transport number of the cations and anions. So this is a simple working of this particular Hittorf's method is there. Means in this method, just we have to take into consideration what type of chemical changes, or the changes in terms of the concentration of this electrolytic solution can takes place in the vicinity of these particular electrodes. When the desirable changes in concentration in the vicinity of these electrodes has to be takes place, we have to stop the current from this external battery. After that, we have to drain out all the solutions present in this transport cell. After rinsing of this particular, or after draining of this particular solution, we have to wet the particular these electrodes, and we have to analyze that particular electrodes, and by using that we have to determine the particular transport number of the ions. In this total experiment, we have to use this colorimeter C. So this colorimeter C is a very important part as far as this Hittorf's transference apparatus is concerned. So in this colorimeter, commonly this colorimeter is made up from the silver. This colorimeter is commonly used silver is commonly used for the precise or accurate work. So what we have to take here, in this colorimeter, it has one platinum dish. It has one platinum dish which is filled with the silver nitrate solution, which is filled with silver nitrate solution. So a platinum dish is there. It is filled up with the silver nitrate solution, which acts as a cathode. Which acts as the cathode. So this silver nitrate solution which act as a cathode, while a pure silver rod is there. Silver rod. We have to take a pure silver rod. This rod is immersed in this silver nitrate solution. Then that rod acts as a anode. This rod acts as the anode, and so we can say that this colorimeter C is made up from these two types of the electrodes. One is it is nothing but a platinum dish is there, a platinum dish or vessel is there. In that platinum dish or vessel, we have to take a purified aqueous solution of silver nitrate. Then this solution acts as the cathode, and in this solution we have to immerse a pure silver rod. Then that rod acts as the anode. So you can say that there is a formation of one type of the cell is there in this particular colorimeter C. After that, what we have to take into consideration, when we pass the external current from this battery toward this transport cell, then what happens, the increase in weight of this platinum dish, due to deposition of silver can be takes place. The increase in weight of this platinum dish due to deposition of silver has to be takes place, and after that, due to such a type of deposition of the silver, we have to determine the quantity of electricity passed through this particular transport cell. So this is the important part from this apparatus, that is a colorimeter C, because it is responsible to determine the quantity of electricity that has to be passed through the particular cell. Now, during this such a type of experiment, we have to determine the particular transport number of the ions. So this transport number of ions has to be determined under the two different cases in which we have to use the two different type of the electrodes. So as far as the calculations of these particular transport numbers is concerned, it is to be carried out in a two different cases. So case first is there, case first. So in this case first, we have to take into consideration the type of electrodes, as when electrodes, or when we take the attackable electrodes, when we take the attackable electrodes, this is the attackable electrodes. That electrodes are the type of such as silver nitrate, or we may take here either copper or copper sulfate. So these are the some examples of this type of the attackable electrodes is there. We may take the another type of electrodes also. So when these attackable electrodes are to be used, then the transport number of these ions, so this transport number of ions can be given by some equations. So transport number of cation, by using this attackable electrodes, transport number of cation is nothing but we represent it as a small t plus, it is a transport number of cation is equal to t plus, is given by the equation d minus e, small d minus e divided by d. So we have to calculate this transport number by using this simple equation. After that, from this we have to calculate transport number of anion. This is the transport number of anion. It is to be represented by T minus. Now it is to be calculated as T minus is equal to, we know very well that transport number of cation and transport number of anion is equal to unity. So while calculating this transport number of anion is equal to T minus is equal to 1 minus T plus. We have to subtract this transport number of cation from this 1. So it is to be equal to 1 minus d minus E divided by d, and if we solve it, it is equal to, therefore T minus is equal to E upon D. It is equal to E upon D. So this is a equation to calculate transport number of this particular anion, and this is the equation to calculate the transport number of this particular anion. So in this case, we have to use this some parameters. So the first parameter is called as the small d. So this d stands for, what is the use of this d is there, or what is meant by this d? So this d is nothing but the equivalence of silver. This d is a equivalence of silver. How this silver get deposited? So that we have to take into consideration as a equivalence of silver that get deposited. And the second important parameter is a small e. Now this small e is there. Now what is by this small e? So this is nothing but the increase in concentration in anode compartment. It is a increase in concentration. Increase in concentration in anode compartment. In anode compartment, that is nothing but the equivalence of cations. That is nothing but the equivalence of cations. So these two important factors we have to take into consideration, a parameter, while calculating this type of the transport number of the ions. So this is the first case when we use the attackable electrodes. So in that case, we have to calculate this transport number by using this type of the equations. Now the case second is there. In this case second, we have to take into consideration another type of the electrodes. So when you take the case second, we have to take here non-attackable electrodes. Non-attackable electrodes. Non-attackable electrodes. These electrodes may be called as, when we take the non-attackable electrodes, it may be called as the inert electrodes. It is inert electrodes. It may be called as the inert electrodes. Now we have to take an example for this inert electrode as a inert platinum electrode. In this case, we have to take here inert platinum electrodes. So when we use this second type of case, that is a non-attackable electrodes, so it may be called as the inert electrodes. So by using this particular inert electrodes, we may calculate now transport number of cations, that is a T plus is equal to. So by using this, we may calculate it by using the equation as E divided by D. So again we have to take here E and D same as that of the previous case, and in the second case the T minus is equal to, again it is equal to 1 minus transport number of cation is equal to 1 minus E divided by D. So we can say that this transport number of anions, that is T minus, is to be equal to 1 minus E divided by D. So these are the two equations to calculate this transport number of ions when we use the non-attackable electrodes, that is inert platinum electrode. So transport number of cation is equal to E divided by D, and transport number of anion is equal to 1 minus E divided by D. So this type of the simple equations can be used for the determination of this transport number of ions. So we can say that this is a very important method, that is called as the Hittorf's method for the determination of the particular transport number of ions. So for this purpose, a simple instrumentation is there, or apparatus is there. That apparatus is called as the transference apparatus for this Hittorf's method. In this apparatus, we have to take some important parts. Before that, this method is based upon a principle that we have to take into consideration, what type of changes in terms of the concentration of the electrolytic solution can be takes place in the vicinity of the electrodes. So that is the basis of this particular method. So in this method, some important part is there, as the center compartment A, that is called as a transport cell. The second important part is there, it has the colorimeter C. This transport cell and colorimeter C is arranged in series with this battery through the variable resistance R. A milliammeter is there, which is useful for the rough estimate of the current flowing through the electrolytic solution. So this type of apparatus is used in this Hittorf's method. And by using this method, we may calculate the particular transport number of the ions by using the two different cases. Case first is attackable electrodes and case second is a non-attackable electrodes. So in this current lecture, we study the first important method for the determination of transport number of ions, that is called as the Hittorf's method. The next method we will study in a next lecture. So with that, I stop here. Thank you so much.